More than half of all strikes for the first half of this year has been around wages, but worryingly, the main reason is non-payment of salaries. This is according to the Casual Workers Advice Office's strike Barometer. Let's discuss the findings with Sydney Moshoadiiba from the Casual Workers Advice Office. Good morning to you. Thank you very much for joining us here on the South African Morning. Let's first and foremost discuss the need for a strike barometer and what the purpose of this tool is.
Good morning and good morning to your viewers. Thanks for having us. The strike barometer tells us mainly about the working class struggles and the militancy that these workers mobilize and the issues behind the industrial actions that they are taking place.
And how was this barometer compiled? What sort of factors were taken into consideration?
Well, what we looked at what are the issues that the workers are raising for this period between January and June, and we found that the highest number of strikes related to wage increases, also related to non-payment of salaries, but also there was the second highest number of strikes related to permanent employment. So those were the issues that we found were most on the high in terms of the issues that related to these strikes.
Let's further expand on maybe perhaps the number of strikes that we've seen in the first half of the year. You've touched on now the reasons behind those strikes, but let's just talk about how often we are seeing strike action take place in the country in 2023, well, the first half of the year.
Yes, from January to June, there's been 39 strikes that we have picked up. And of the 39 strikes, 19 of them were wildcat strikes, whilst 20 were protected strikes. And we find that most of these wildcat strikes are triggered by the issues around non-payment of salaries, the issues around non-payment of benefits, especially issues around overtime. Workers will find that they are not aware that there are budget cuts, especially in the public sector, but they continue to work overtime, only they don't know that they won't be paid for that overtime. And in some instances, workers will go on strike, but in many areas, workers have succumbed to submit that they've lost those hours.
And with regards to the strikes that we've seen so far in the year, how many of those strikes have possibly turned violent, and how many of those strikes have we seen perhaps, police being perhaps too harsh in their use of force? Have you analyzed those factors?
Yes, we have picked up that there's only one strike where workers were shot at. It happened in Germiston on the 24th of June, where workers went to a Golden Bakery in Germiston to demand letters of confirmation of employment, and the employer therefore used inkabis to disperse those workers, but those inkabis actually shot live at those workers, and 3 workers were critically wounded, and 1 board member of the Casual Workers Advice Office was also critically injured.
And how often are we seeing resolution come to the fore? Are we seeing these memorandums of understandings that are being delivered being actually taken seriously and some sort of resolution being put in place?
In many instances, we have picked up that these strikes end up with some positive resolution on the part of the workers, whereby after the workers go on strike, then the employers will therefore pay salaries or either reinstate unfairly dismissed workers. And up to now, the majority, we will say that workers have actually achieved their demands for the strikes that they took.
And how often are we seeing a reoccurrence of a particular strike that's maybe happened in the past come back again because of unanswered or people feeling like the memorandum of understanding hasn't been sufficiently dealt with?
These happen quite often, especially in the public sector, where you have as an example, we take the community health workers. These are workers that are employed on short-term contracts, but these workers, there is a need for them to service those communities. And often the municipalities will therefore not renew their contracts. They go on strike. Those contracts will be extended. And it goes on and goes on again. Next year, the same thing happens. The contract is terminated. They go on strike. They are reinstated. It's the cycle of struggle for those workers. Also, as well as EPWP workers, we know these are in nature short-term type of employment contracts, but you also find that in many municipalities, those workers will strike once their contracts are terminated.
And then just lastly, in conclusion, how are you hoping that this information will be utilized? How would you like for South Africans to use this specific barometer?
Yes, it's very much important for South Africans to be aware of the issues that the workers are facing and the conduct of the bosses generally in private and in public. As to say, when workers go on strike, communities must understand that these are hardships that workers are facing and they are left with no alternative. The strike is the last resort that the workers embark on. And we are calling on all activists, worker activists, to support workers by all means whenever they go on strikes.
Well, Mr. Moshoadiiba, thank you very much for your time, for your insights, and for sharing the stats and the findings of this barometer. We appreciate you joining us this morning. That was Sydney Moshoadiiba from the Casual Workers Advice Office, just talking to us about this strike barometer that organization has created, and just talking us through some of the analysis and findings that has been found after the use of that barometer, just analyzing the first half of the year and the strike action that we've observed so far.